Okay, so today we are going to talk about other Docker commands now. So we have already discussed about Docker container ps and then Docker container ps-a, right? These commands we have already talked about. Now this container is currently in stopped state right now. So now if we want to restart the container, so we can restart it, right? So let's restart the container. So I would say Docker container start. So if we want to start a stopped container, we can say Docker container start and name of the container. Okay, so this will start our container, Docker container ps. It has started our container. If we want to check the logs of the container, Docker container logs and name of the container, which is Jenkins, right? So I can see the logs of the server running inside the container. This also we had seen. Now let's see how can we go inside the container. We can also go inside the running container. Now let's see how can we do that. So for that, Docker exec stands for execute -it. -it stands for interactive. This IT stands for interactive. Then you have to provide the name of the container, which is Jenkins, and here inside it you want to run a shell program. Shell means command terminal inside this sh. So now I am inside the container. You can see there is a command signature here. So I am inside the container. Now I can list the files which are inside it. ls-lrt. This is a command, a Linux command to list down the directories or files inside the current directory. So ls-lrt, now we can see here we have got these files, right? These are the files. So these are the files from the container. Please understand, these are not the files from my machine. These are from the container itself. Okay, so ls-lrt, and then if we want to check the current directory, we can say pwd. So pwd is again a Linux command for printing a current working directory, right? I am on the home directory. Let's say echo is for printing $Jenkins_home. So let's see what is the Jenkins installation directory. So for Jenkins installation directory, there is a Jenkins home environment variable which is inside the container. Okay, this environment variable is from inside the container, right? So this is the Jenkins home /var/Jenkins_home. So let's go inside this directory. Jenkins_home. So now inside this directory we have got all the Jenkins related files we can see here, right? As I had mentioned earlier, that when you will run the image, a Jenkins image, all the files which we usually get once we install Jenkins, those files would already be present inside the container, right? So these are those files which we get when we install the Jenkins. Okay, so this jobs folder will contain our different jobs created, right? Then this plugins folder will have all our plugins installed. Then the users folder will have our all users created inside the Jenkins. All the secrets would be part of this directory. This is the config XML of the Jenkins. So all these files we get when we install Jenkins. So these are already there inside the container. So you can go inside the container, you can inspect the contents of the container, right? So, and if you want to come out of this, you can say exit. So exit will take you out of the container. Now let's see other few commands. Now we have seen this like we are not yet seen this build command, which we will see once we will start implementing our Docker files, right? But we have already seen the prune command for container, right, which deletes all the stocked containers. So similarly I can docker image ls. So if I want to remove any image from my system, so I have few of these images along with our Jenkins image, right? I have few other images also. So now I can remove the particular image also. Now this Jenkins image we are no longer using. We are using this Jenkins image to run our Jenkins container, right? So this is no longer in use. So I can remove this. So for that you will say docker image rm stands for remove. Then you have to provide this name and don't forget to mention the tag. If you don't mention the tag, Docker will look for the image with the latest tag, and we do not have any image with this Jenkins name with the latest tag. We have the specific tag 263, and now I am going to remove this image. Now another very important point, like this image got removed because it is not in use. Yes, Ramesh, because it is not in use, right? Yes, Ramesh.
Yeah. So Pranad, yesterday I have installed this Docker image via container, and today when I am just typing this command called docker image ls, then it is not giving me the result.
Okay, so please start the Docker desktop first.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I think I have mentioned docker images ls. Instead, it's docker image ls. So I'm getting two versions. One version is latest and the other is 2.60.3. So
Correct. Because one image, this one is of the latest type, the one which we are currently using to run our Docker container. This one.
Yes.
Correct. This is already in use. We are running the container using it. This we had tried using it earlier, but as this has got few issues, with the installations of the plugins, so we are no longer using it. So that's what I have just removed, right? Now what I wanted to say here is, when you remove the image, that image will get removed only and only if no container is using that image. Please understand this. If any of the container is using the image, and if you try removing it, then that image will not be removed. Let's see the example. This image I have removed using docker image rm and the name and tag of the image. Now let's see docker image ls, and now I'll try to remove this image which we are using. We are running the container. Docker image rm, and let's try to remove this. So it will say that, unable to remove this because container this is using its referenced image. So it is saying that the container so and so is using this image, so it is not able to remove. So please understand that image can only be removed if no container, either in start state or stop state. Even if my container is in stop state, still I won't be able to remove the image. So for removing the image, Now for example, these images, now I have got these images, right? So these images are not used by any of the containers, so I can remove them one by one. Also I can remove them, or I can say docker image prune. So this prune will remove all the images which are not in use. See, but not in use, not the ones which are being used by any container. Okay, yes. So now let's cls and let's do docker image ls. So we have got only these two images. Okay, this one is in use, this one also is in use on my system, but I was able to now remove all other dangled images. Dangled means they are not used by any of the container, right? So we have seen how to remove the images, we have seen how to enter inside the container using exec-it. Now let's see how can we copy. Now if I want to copy any file from my this directory, say my current directory, I want to copy any file inside the container, let's say. Okay, so how to do that? So for that, let's first go inside the container to get some path from there. So how can we go inside the container? We can go using this docker exec -it interactive, name of the container, and sh. So it will take you to the shell of that container. Now I am inside the container. Now let me do pwd and let me create my own directory now. So I can create my own directory, mkdir pd. Okay, it says that permission is denied. Okay, so let me go inside some cd/var. We had already gone into this Jenkins_home. Okay, cd/var, and let me check the name of the directory. It's Jenkins_home. So this is where we have all the Jenkins related files. Let's go inside this ls-lrt, and let's try to create a directory here, mkdir. Yes, now I am able to create a directory here, ls-lrt. Now this is the pd directory which got created. Now let's say I want to copy some file inside this directory container, this pd directory. Okay, so I'll just take the location of this. I'll just take it here and pd. So inside this directory I want to copy some file from my host machine. So how can we do that? Let's exit from the container, let's clear the screen, and you have to say docker cp. Cp stands for copy, and then you have to provide the name of a file you want to copy. Now let's say I want to C and users on the D, and let's say I want to copy some file from here. Let's say this one, imdb0.txt. I want to copy this inside the container. So cp, then the name source, then you have to provide a colon, name of the container, sorry, not colon here, space, then name of the container, which is Jenkins, colon. So this is the copy has got two arguments basically, source argument and destination. So destination is name of the container colon a location from that. Right, so you can see that successfully copied so and so inside this. Now let's check if that got copied, if that exists there or not. Let's go inside the container. Let's do cd to this location. I am doing cd now. So ls-lrt. So see here, I have got my file. So this directory was initially blank, this pd directory, but now I have got my some file got copied from my host machine to container. Similarly, if I want to copy anything from the container to host machine, that can also be achieved. Now let's try that. I'll just come out of this. Now let's say I want to copy this config file, for example. Okay, so the location of the config file inside the container is, please understand, we are talking about the location of the file inside the container. So it is in this directory, Jenkins home config.xml. This is the file. This file I want to copy on my host. So let's exit, and now let's do it. So for that, again, it is very simple. Docker cp. Now the source is the location from container. So I have to provide the name of the container, Jenkins colon the location of a file you want to copy. So this becomes your source, and the destination where you want to copy it on the host machine. So let's say I want to copy it on my current directory, this directory. See, successfully copied so and so to my directory. Now let's go and check the config file. See, this is the config file, and this 13 September, today's date. Okay, let me create one blank directory, let's say here, and inside that I will copy. Okay, inside this, let's copy it inside this. Right, so inside the blank now I have copied. See, already blank, and here I have got my file, which I copied from inside. Right, so this is how you can copy any. This cp is very helpful command. You can copy anything from your host to container. If you want to copy anything from your container to your host, that is also possible. So let me just take this and put it in our document. Okay, just as an example, so it would be helpful. Just a second, let me check where that cp command is. So I'll just put that example there. Docker cp, yes. So this command is for copying anything from container to host. So we have got that example. So this is the example to copy anything from the container to your host system. So I'm just mentioning here an example. And this command, the other one, is for copying anything from your host to container. So we have got that command also, this one. Okay, so Docker cp, these are the commands for copying the containers to and from. This we will talk about environment variables after some time, but let's understand now few other commands. Just a second, let me just check and see what commands we can check now, because we are yet to discuss about Docker Compose, so we cannot see any Docker Compose related command. But yeah, this run command we have already talked about, this run command which runs the container right? Publishing the ports. Volume, we will see now what is the meaning of volume here. Let's understand the meaning of volume. Now I have got inside my container, I have got my this PD directory, and that PD directory has got the file, right? Now if I delete the container, if I remove it, that's fine. Docker stop Jenkins, I'm stopping my container. Okay, so let's start the container again. Docker start, container is started. Let's go inside it again. Docker exec. Okay, now let's check the file.
Pranat, just sorry to interrupt. Can you go a bit slow? Actually, it's difficult for me to follow at the same time. Can you just go a bit slow?
Sure. Okay. So now I had stopped the container. I had started it. Now I am again got entered into it, and now I can see my file there. So there is no problem here when you stop the container. But if I delete the container, no, if let's say my container, if I delete it, or if that container got crashed and got removed, then we will lose all the data from that container. Please understand, containers are stateless. Okay, containers are stateless. So if you want to preserve the data, now this is a very important use case. Now we have our Jenkins running. Okay, now let's understand the use case first, and then we will understand the concept of volumes. So now I have my Jenkins running. It is inside the container. Let me log in. Let's create here a simple job. This is the Jenkins running from inside the container. Let's create a simple job. New hello world. Okay, now let's scroll down. Let's add one build step. Or just a minute, let's add a shell step. I'll say echo hello world. A simple job. Okay, I'll say. Now let's run. So the job got executed successfully. Right? Now let's go inside the container. Now this job has been saved inside the container. Please understand. Again, I am specifically telling that the Jenkins server is not running on my system. I do not have anything related to Jenkins. Whatever the service I have already stopped it. I have disabled it. So this Jenkins is not running on my system. It is running inside the container. So whatever the job files or artifacts, let's say, will get created, those would be stored inside the container. Okay, now let's go and check. So let me come out of the container just to revise this command again. Exec -it. So you can say docker exec -it jenkins sh. Let's go inside. Let's go to cd and this location. Where Jenkins _ home. Now let's say ls -lrt So I have listed the command, listed the contents. Now here we have got a directory called jobs. Let's go inside this. Now this is my job, hello world, which I had just created. Okay, now this job is there inside hello world. So these are the contents of that job. So this is the config XML of that job. This folder will contain the builds. So let's go inside it, builds. So these are the details of that build which I just executed. Now this content, now let's see what do I mean by containers are stateless. Now let's see what do I mean. Let's exit from here. Okay. Now let's stop the container. I have stopped it. Let's remove the container. Container prune. And let's start the container again. Okay. Now I have got that command here. I'll just use that one. Docker run this one. Okay, let's start the container. Docker run -d -- name. This is the name of my container. These are the ports I want to publish. To the external 8083 port, I want to map my containers 8080 on which my Jenkins server starts and listens for connections to, and this is the name of my image. Let's run the okay. So here it should be this. Correct. Now the new container started. Okay. Docker container ps. Now this container is getting started. Docker container logs. We can check the logs. I can use this container ID also. So the way we can use for different operations, we can use name of the Jenkins container, right? For copying, we need to give a reference to the container. Say for printing the logs, we need to give the reference to the container. So at on all of those places where I can use Jenkins, where I can use the container name, at all those places I can use the container ID also. So this container is started. Now let's go inside the container and let's check if we have got the old contents there or not. Okay, so CLS, I would just go inside it. I'm inside the container. Now let's go to this CD, this location. PWD. So I'm inside this ls-lrt, just print the contents. Now I do not have that PD directory here which I had created. If we go inside this jobs, it doesn't have anything. So all my contents got vanished, right? They also got deleted along with the container. Now this is a serious issue. Like I am running my Jenkins inside the container, I'm using it, but then let's say if that container got crashed, right, and then we won't be able to recover the data then, right, along with the container. If I remove the container, if by mistake or let's say deliberately if I removed any container, then I won't be able to get my data. Now the point is, what we can do in this scenario is we can persist the data on our Docker host machine. Meaning what we can do is, let me open a Word and tell you what do I mean by that. So here we have a Docker host machine. This is our Docker host machine. This. Okay. Inside this we are running our container. This is my container. Jenkins. Now what I can do is, whatever the data I have, now we don't need to preserve all the data, by the way. When it comes to Jenkins, what we are interested in preserving is jobs, right? The rest of the data, if you do not have any of the specific data created in that container, then you won't be preserving that. The installation files of the Jenkins and all that we don't need to preserve. So we should also understand what should be preserved and what should not be. Okay, the installation related files, there is no point in preserving those. Whenever you will create another container from that same image, those contents would always be coming inside that. What should be preserved is the user specific data, our own data, like jobs here in this case. So that we now want to preserve. Okay, so we can preserve that by mounting. So what data we want to preserve from inside the container, which location. So we want to preserve a data which is there in /var /jenkins _home and /jobs. This we want to preserve. Okay, so what we can do is we can create a mount on Docker host system. Here, this is a Docker host system. Just a second. Docker host. So what we can do is we can create a location on this Docker host, and on that location, on that directory location, we can preserve the data from inside the container. So this location in our case. Now how can this be done? Using volumes. Okay, so there are basically two types of volumes. One is the named volumes and another one is a bind mounts. Okay, so we will see both, but the purpose of both the volumes are nothing but to preserve the data. Okay, so once we create a volume, no, even if we delete the container, still the particular data from the container, the one which we had created a mount for, that would be preserved on our host, Docker host. Okay, when we will start a new container with that volume attached, so that data would be copied. So what will happen is, once you mount a volume from the current container, now this container you have mounted a volume, so your data from this location would be first copied to your Docker host on some location. Okay, and then once you create another container, let's say you create another container, you remove this container, then the content from this directory inside the container will go, obviously, but you will not lose it, because when you had started this container, you had started it with the volume. So when the volume would be created, that volume will have the particular data from that container copied and preserved, and that volume would be present inside the Docker host. So this is where that volume would be, on this machine, Docker host machine. Okay, so when you will start the container with a volume attached to a particular directory inside the container, so once that container is created, first what will happen, a directory would be mapped to some location on your Docker host. So whenever you will create any data now, when you are using now Jenkins, you are creating different jobs, different kinds of data in this directory. So this volume which you have created on your Docker host will keep getting that data. This would be connected always, the location inside the container and the mount you have created on the Docker host, those would always be connected. So whatever you will put to the volume on your Docker host, you will get inside the container. Whatever you will put inside the container at that location which is mounted, you will get that content here. So this would always be mounted. So contents here you will receive inside the container, contents you create inside the container you will receive here. Okay, so that is how the mounts work. So once you will delete this container, no, container would be deleted, but the mount would still be there on the host, right? So you will not lose your data. Now when you will create another container, what you have to make sure is, say this container, another container, this you have deleted. See. Okay, now this container, once you will create it, what you have to make sure is, let me remove these containers just to make it clear that this container is no longer running on our system. Okay, this container let me remove. So this is removed. This is a new container. Now when you will run this new container, what you have to make sure is that same bind mount or the same volume mount which has the data of the old container which is now no longer running, no longer present. So you will attach that same mount to this container. So the entire data which is preserved in this mount you will receive inside the container, the one which you have created. Okay, that is the concept. So that is how we can preserve the data even if we remove the container. Yes. Yes, Ramesh. I'm not able to hear you.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, now I am able to.
Okay, so we are trying to preserve the data in the volume mount in Docker host system, right? Just as a backup if the container is deleted or removed. Then while the new container is created, we will try to link the volume mount with the new container. But then preserving the data again in a in a system or the Docker host, again it's not a very safe way, right? Because the laptop can be having issues, or it may be totally damaged or something like that. Then we will lose the whole information in mount. So is there any way that we can store it online or in any repo or something else like that, just for safer side, to connect it to the new container?
Okay, now to answer to this question, like let's say you are having an AWS account. Okay, so on AWS we can have different storages there, like for example S3 blob storage, or there is a service called ELB. Okay, not ELB, sorry, there is a service called a file system service is there. So what you can do is, instead of mounting any location from your Docker host, you can mount that S3, let's say for example, or you can mount the file system service or file system container. If you create that container there, and container here is different thing. This is a system container which runs some kind of an application, and container there which we create there is a folder. It's like a folder which contains your different kind of contents. Okay, so what you can do is, you can mount, instead of mounting any local location, you can mount that S3 blob storage, for example. Or let's say if you are using AKS, then you can create their blob storage, and that blob storage you can mount. So your contents would be stored not on the Docker host system, but on the blob storage created on, let's say, on Azure. So even if your Docker host system goes, or it has some issues there, so still you can, what you can do is, when you will start a new container, you will mount the same blob storage where you have preserved the data, and you would be able to persist the data in spite of the failure of the Docker host. Getting my point? So it's not necessarily the mount should be on the host, it could be on the crowd services also.
Okay.
Right?
Makes sense.
But
Yeah.
the main concept is, but let's understand the main concept. The main concept is, if you want to preserve a data, then you have to preserve it with the help of mount, volume mounts. Okay. Now, if you check out the official document of Jenkins, I'll show why I'm taking you there, because they provide all these things, like which volumes you should be mounting and all.
Also, so to mount or to preserve the data in a volume mount, is there any restriction, or is there something like should we only store jobs, or will it take everything and anything? Like, what's the limitation of volume mount?
No, there is no limitation. Now, if you want to preserve the you can mount any directory from the container, even the home directory also you can mount. But the problem is that that particular data would be mounted to your host system, which would be in terms of size, it would be huge. And if you do not want to keep that kind of a bulky data on your system and keep maintaining it, then but that is not something which is a wise thing to do. We should always be mounting. Now, if you check the documentation, now they have particularly mentioned that we should be always mounting the Jenkins home. Basically, Jenkins home is the directory where all the user specific data goes. Okay, see here, Jenkins home. How to preserve? I can preserve even home directory also. This one, cd $home. So I can, sorry, I think I made a mistake. cd, or let me go to the current user directory, cd dot, or let's say cd dot, sorry, cd dot here and pwd. Now I am on this, say, home directory. Now I can preserve any directory, whatever I want to mount. Let's say cd/home. ls, just a second, let me come out of this because I had done some mistake there. exec-19, let me go inside. Now if I say pwd, now this is the directory, the root one, I am inside. So if I want, I can preserve this also. That's not a problem. There is no limitation as such. But we should not do that. We should always be preserving the data which we are more concerned about. and that is this one, Jenkins home, because whenever we will be creating any jobs or anything which is our data, our own data which resides inside the container, so that is always going to be created inside this directory, var and Jenkins home, right? So we should always be preserving this one. The rest is all the machine specific data would be there, which would always be created when you will create your own container. Again, a new container whenever you will create now, so that data would again be there, which would be coming from that image, Docker image of the Jenkins here in this case. But this data is going to be our own data, so we should preserve this. Getting my point? Right, Rameshri, have I answered your question?
Yes, Pranay, got it. Thanks.
Right, so now what we will do is, now we will use this one. Now this is interesting point. This -v. We will talk about this -v now. Okay, and I can do is now is let's Docker container ps. Let's stop this container and remove it. Let's prune this. Okay, now let's run the container, but now we will be adding one more thing. Now what this is, -v stands for volume. This is the name of the volume. This is called as named volumes, and bind mounts is different thing. We will talk about later about bind mounts, but this is a named volume, and colon, and you should be mentioning the location from the container which you want to mount. Okay, so let's copy this and put it here, and now let's start the container. So now I have started the container. Okay, I have started the container. Now let's say Docker container ps. So my container is started. So when the container is started, now it has also created a volume. So we can also see how many volumes are there. Let's see, Docker, the way we do, Docker image ls, Docker container ps. Similarly, we can also check the volumes. So Docker volume ls. So we can see, I'll show you, cls Docker volume ls. So this is the volume which we just got created, Jenkins home. Okay, so now this Jenkins home volume, now what is the location at which actually the data would be stored, we will see that. But let's not get into that right now, because we need to inspect the volume in order to know what is the actual location on the Docker host where it is going to save that data and all. But let's not get into that right now. Let's understand it in this way now, that this volume is now connected to the location. This volume, Jenkins home, is now connected to my container's certain location. Okay, so inside the container I have got /var/Jenkins _home. So whatever would be data, now I would be creating whatever data, right, at the time of using the Jenkins, it would be copied to the volume mount. Whatever I'll copy here, it would be copied inside the location, right? That is how. Now let's do docker container logs Jenkins. Let me get this. Let's sign in.
Are we creating any separate volume inside the container also?
No. Inside the container we don't do anything. What we do is basically we only link the location, this which is inside the container, we link it to the volume created on the Docker host. So it just creates a link between the two. The one which is on the Docker host with the directory which is inside the container. Right?
Okay, yeah.
Now let's go here. Let's refresh this page. Let me paste the. Okay, just a minute. Let me log out. Let me just copy the password again. Sorry. So I'm inside this. Actually I wanted to skip the installation of the plugins for now, but it will take unnecessary time now. And then let's create a job, okay, a simple one. Then we will remove the container. Again we'll start the new one with that mount attached. This is important. Whenever we will now start a new container now, after removing the first one, we have to make sure that we will do like this. What is important is whenever we will start a new container now, let's say Jenkins new, we need this. The mount should be again mapped to this location which is inside the new container. So all the data which is there in this would be copied inside the new container. That is the concept actually. When there is no volume, it will create the volume. First it will take the data from container to volume. Now once you will use that volume, attach it to the new container, the container is starting, so it will take the data from the volume on the Docker host and will copy it to the container.
Pranay, I have a query here. So let's say from the container one, like whatever the data that is present in the container one with respect to this Jenkins home folder, everything will get updated in the mount which we create, right? So let's say in the mount, if I just update some apart from the information I have from the container one, let's say I have some 5 files, but I'm adding 6th file locally in that mount.
Correct.
Then will that 6th file be transferred to that container 1 or is it just interchangeable only with the container 2?
No. Whatever you will create here, I will show that to you once we will create a bind mounts. When we will create bind mounts, no? So the source, location and destination, right? So even if I create anything on the source, that you will get to the destination. And destination to source. It's the both ways.
Okay. So what I was thinking was we will always try to, get the data from the Docker host to the new container which we create, but I was not expecting that whatever that mount is there, it will also try transferring the data to the old container also. Like is it interchangeable with the old and new container all the time?
No, just a minute. What do you mean by old container and can you just elaborate this.
Let's say we are having the Jenkins container right now, right, which is running, and then whatever the information we have in the Jenkins home, we are trying to, pass that information to the volume mount which we are creating in the Docker host, right?
Correct.
Yes. So now in the Docker host, let's say I'm putting one extra file named Ramya. So now, will this extra file will also be synced to the container, to the Jenkins container from which we got the info?
Yes, if that container is still running, then you will get it there also.
Okay, because what I thought was, if I am adding some new file, I thought that this Ramya, I mean the new file named Ramya, I thought it will not be synced with the Jenkins container, because whenever we are taking the input from this mount to the new container which we create, only then I thought the sync will be there. I mean, I didn't know that it will also get synced with the old one. I mean, if we delete the old one, and then if we are trying to install the new container or run the new container, then I thought all the information in volume mount will be transferred to the new container.
If you have when you have the mounts, so those mounts are like this mount. Basically, if you have this mount now connected to both the containers, now in that case the scenario would be you will be having two containers sharing the same mount, right?
Yes.
So this is also having and this is also having, right? So now whenever any container will create any file to the, now container would always be creating of any content to the to its own location, like this Jenkins home. So if this container creates anything, that would be part of this volume. This would again be received by the another container which is mounting that same location.
All right.
And that is what actually the mounts are also used for. See, the main point is mounts are not only used for preserving the content. What if, like we had one scenario in our solution, we had one scenario there where we wanted to share some files. Like once this container will start, say this container 1, we had a scenario where we wanted to share some files with the other container. Okay, so once this container will start, it will create few files. We wanted those files to be shared with the other container. So there also we had used mounts. So it's not only for preserving the data, it's also when you want two containers to share the contents.
Okay, so let's say apart from those two containers, if I am just manually putting one file, so even that file will be shared with both the containers?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that was my query. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, that's what, that I will show you when we will see bind mounts, because it's quite common scenario with the in case of bind mounts actually. Okay, so now I have created a job when we were discussing about this, and now the job is executed. Now let's go and exec. Let's go to cd/var/jenkins_home and cd jobs. So I have got my job file here. Let's come out of this. Let's stop the container. Let's prune it. I have pruned. Now let's start a new container. Let's give a different name just to differentiate it from the old one. And the point is this. Now the data from here would be going inside my new container. Now let's docker exec -it, docker exec -it, then the name Jenkins new sh. I'm inside this cd/var Jenkins underscore home, Jenkins underscore home ls-lrt. Now let's go inside cd jobs. Now we can see the still hello world is there inside the new container. So we have not we have not lost our data. Exit. Let me print logs and get the Jenkins new. Right, so Jenkins is up and running. So my user and everything has been stored now because I have preserved the just a minute. The D from the D at the right time. Yes. So I have got my job and everything because I had preserved Jenkins home directory. So whatever is there in that Jenkins home, everything got preserved.